This lecture would be dedicated to the provisions related to input service distributor. Before we get into understanding input tax credit provisions for input service distributor, we'll call him ISD. Let's first check out what an ISD exactly is. An ISD is an office of a supplier. It can be just one office of a supplier who has many offices. One office of a supplier who is engaged in supplies of goods and services, and he has received a tax invoice. He has received a tax invoice against input services. Only input services, not against inputs or capital goods, only input services. So an ISD is an office of a supplier who is engaged in supply of goods or services. He's received tax invoice for input services. Now we know that input tax would contain SGST, CGST and IGST, and he'll be able to distribute all of these taxes to a supplier of goods and services having the same PAN as the office of the supplier, the input service distributor. So there's the important rule that you'll have to keep in mind. The input service distributor and the supplier should have the same PAN. Only then input service tax credit can be transferred to this supplier, can be distributed. This distribution of ISD has to follow certain rules. Let's call them the distribution rules. They are similar to the set of rules that we discussed of input tax credit. Let's check them out. So you have the input service distributor and you have a credit recipient. The input service distributor is the one who has the tax invoice, and he has the right to transfer the credit to the supplier, to the recipient. This credit can include IGST, CGST and SGST. The rules are to do with the location of the ISD and the recipient, and what tax which the ISD has received can he transfer, can he credit to what tax. So basically before and after situation and the location. We can draw a 3x2 matrix to understand this better. On the y-axis you have the location of the ISD and the recipient. The first situation is where they are both located within the same state, and the second, they're in different states. And the x-axis has the credit received by the ISD. What we are trying to find out is as what can the ISD distribute the credit he's received. Let's take up the first situation where the location is in the same state, both ISD and recipient are in the same state, and the ISD has received a credit of CGST. He can transfer this CGST as CGST. So CGST can be transferred as CGST only if the location is within the same state. The next box is for credit received SGST, same state. SGST can be distributed as SGST only. The third situation is where the ISD has received credit for IGST. He can distribute it as CGST or SGST if the supplier, the recipient, is within the same state. Let's check out the situation where ISD and the recipient are in different states. If the ISD has received CGST, then he can distribute it to the recipient as either CGST or IGST. If he has received SGST, he can distribute it as SGST or IGST. So IGST is common in both the states, and that's the logic behind transferring IGST in both situations. The third is where he's got IGST, he can transfer it, distribute it to the recipient as CGST or IGST. So this is the entire situation. Within the same state, you should keep in mind that interstate sales attract IGST while intrastate sales attract CGST and SGST. And that's the logic. Check out the row for the same state. He is not distributing anything as IGST if it's within the same state. It's either CGST or SGST or both. While in different states, IGST is present in all three scenarios. So that's the logic. Interstate attracts IGST. So if the ISD and recipient are in different states, the ISD can distribute everything as IGST, while if they are in the same state, he will not distribute anything as IGST. That's the logic that you can keep in mind, and this becomes really easy.